Like I always think about like Joe Rogan's opening where it's like the Joe Rogan experience, check it out.
Yeah,
Like we don't have a good opening yet. And so
that's
obviously
okay.
when you talked about earlier, like what should be our opening, I'm just like, that's a great question. So we need to brainstorm on that and be like, okay, in the My First Million podcast, Sean talked about, oh, should we have a one-liner that gets people hooked? Should we have a song? Should we have like a cheers like the Dilbert guy? And so we will figure
I
that out as time
I think
goes
it's
on.
Dan Gilbert. It's not Dilbert.
But it's
No, Scott Adams created Dilbert, but his name is Dan Gilbert. Dilbert. I have to go look into this more because I was like listening to that first one you sent me, and I was
yeah.
like, in my mind, I was like, this guy wrote a cartoon strip. It's like super successful for decades, and
hmm
also like owns the Orioles.
No. I think you're
I was
talking
like,
about
those are
David Rubenstein.
oh yeah.
Dave Rubenstein owns the
That's right.
Orioles now,
I'm
and
getting
they
them all mixed
talked
up
about
now.
him. But
They did.
streams crossed. It's okay. But so in this podcast, we are gonna like we Garrett and I are gonna try to get like into the weeds on what makes a good podcast. And My First Million is the first episode we're gonna talk about. Or actually the first podcast we're going to talk about because we both, I think, Garrett, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I love their podcast. 99% of the time when I know a My First Million podcast is coming on, I'm like, okay, I'm either going to get, some good idea from this. It's going to be a good conversation, or I'm going to learn something from some old person with a wealth of knowledge that I can apply to my life. And so that's why so the first question I had in our docket of things to do is like, why do you like My First Million? I kind of already said that, but I'm curious, why do you like My First Million podcast?
Um, so I don't know if you sent me an episode first or you helped me discover it first or not. Though now that I've subscribed to their YouTube channel, they've done a great job at like the titles. They do a great job at that cold open where it's the thing that's like this exciting thing. It's like a little bit of bait on the hook to say, oh, they're going to talk about blank, and then it's like the title was this $8 billion investor tells you, why all the gurus are full of it or whatever. And it's like, oh, I want to know that. Like there's always this secret knowledge thing.
Great hooks.
And so I think the hook, but the overall hook of My First Million is actually genius because they bring in people who are way up here. Now that they didn't start that point, but they're bringing up people that are way up here. And everyone wants to the people that listen to it are aspirational. I think aspiration is a really strong emotion. And what they're doing is they are making it relatable. Now, I'm not going to be a billionaire, but could I be a millionaire? Right? And it's like My First Million. It's how did you get to this initial step? I think it's just a really genius framing. And so I'm always intrigued. And I think Sam, being a copywriter, kind of like, email newsletter marketer guy, like he knows some of those things that like make the clips like attractive. And then when you watch it, it's enjoyable. I think like I love their rapport back and forth. I think Sean and him like they've talked about it. They just like talking to each other.
Yeah.
And then there's always these little nuggets of wisdom or kind of like a resource or people are pretty real on that podcast, it seems. Like they're going to kind of say something that you're like, oh, interesting. Like I don't know if they're saying this in other formats, but I like just hearing them talk, and I like the way that they kind of like unlock knowledge. I don't know, what is it for you?
So all those, I totally agree with you. Like the hooks, the back and forth, the banter, they seem to like really enjoy talking to each other and they get excited. And one thing I've heard from them is like, when you leave a conversation with more energy, it's good. Like it's good for you. Like sometimes you're in a conversation and you're like, that was exhausting. But if you're in a conversation and you leave energized, you're like, that was fun. I'd do that again tomorrow, right? And I do that. I have those conversations with you where I'm just like, man, Garrett will say something, I'll say something, and it's just like feeding off each other. And I can just tell when Sean and Sam get together, it's just you can hear it in their voices most of the time. I mean, I don't think I've heard of any their podcasts where you haven't heard it, but like they're just feeding off each other, one after the other. So it's really fun. And I think the main thing for me though, I started listening to them about 5 years ago. And I think I looked at like the first podcast I actually listened to them, but it's relatable for me because I have my own business and I'm trying to make $1 million, I guess. Like, and so I think that's the main thing for me is like, they are always ideating. They are always bringing in people that can help you ideate with small business ideas and like people who've made it, who can tell you what the things they went through. So I think that's super helpful for me because when you start to hear the people who've made it talk about their struggles and you're like, oh, I'm going through that right now too. It's just like, oh, it's a confidence booster. And it's like, okay, if they went through it and they can push through, I can do the same. And then I think the last thing is like, I can rely on them being a good podcast, right? Some podcasts, I think, you don't know if there's going to be a good episode or not. So you're kind of like, what is this going to get into? So like they make their podcasts around 45 minutes to an hour each time. It's not 3 hours. It's not 20 minutes. So
that's what I was going to comment on. Is like the length
Exactly. Length is huge. Like, I mean, a Joe Rogan podcast lasts 3 hours, right? So you're like, oh, I'm going to be in this for a while to get a nugget or two. But like the other thing, and we can get into what do you think, why do you think My First Million is a popular podcast? And I'll try to jump into that real quick. On my side is I just pulled their description of their podcast, and the description of their podcast on YouTube says this: 2 guys talking about business. We've done it, parentheses, sold our companies, and now we talk about new ideas, opportunities, and investments. Hosted by Sean Puri and Sam Parr, produced by HubSpot, which hopefully one day will be produced by somebody because that's super helpful. And then it says, sometimes we bring on guests ranging from billionaires to stay-at-home moms. You've got moms who've got a side hustle and bringing on $10,000, blah, blah, blah. So like that right there, I feel like they put their description out there. Never read it before, but that is spot on, right? Yeah. Like, what do you think? Like, is that something they hit all those notes?
Yeah, I would say the description also is a good example of copywriting. I'm midway through the Copy That course, Sam's course.
Cool.
Which has been an interesting experience to kind of like, learn how he sees the world and also this technique that I never really saw. I'm working on communication, written and verbal communication. And that description, as you talk about it, it kind of hits all these like attention, interest, kind of like, ooh, desire, like what I'm going to learn from people who have done it. And then they're going to bring other people and it's a wide range. They all those things kind of seem interesting. I think that they are popular in part because the episode that we watch, which is kind of the behind the scenes one, right? It's like how we do it and what they're thinking about. You can tell that they are thoughtful about how they approach it, and it shows kind of like in what they're presenting. Like they enjoy it overall, and then it's an enjoyable experience, and they have good rapport, and you have this parasocial relationship with them, and the topics are interesting. The format is digestible, so I'll listen to a full one, whereas other podcasts, essentially I'm only interacting with them in clip format. Like Sean brought up how he loves Basement Yard, which I think those guys are hilarious. Molly,
I've never even heard of them. I didn't check
Basement Yard
yet,
is good. There's some really funny clips. Those guys are really funny together. And I'm not going to listen to 3 hours of them talking to each other. I'm going to watch like the best highlights of that thing because I think something like a comedy podcast or something like Joe Rogan or even like Huberman or a really long conversation with Chris Williamson. For me, it's like, I wish this was more digestible, but like my blocks of time are just not that wide. I just don't want to prioritize the time. So I think it's good. It's good.
Like so they are focusing on their clips too. Like in that brainstorming session, they were like, hey, we need a clip army, right? We need a clip army to make our episodes more digestible so they can get out more. By the way, they have 921,000 subscribers right now. So hopefully one day they do a My First Million subscribers. And
they're going to. They're smart enough.
For sure. They've got to.
But they're also like not as prescriptive or it's not like they're doing this with like this master plan. I think.
But I think in the beginning, right, they don't have a master plan, but I think in the beginning it's structured enough so that one of them tells a story. Like one of them tells a story and then the other one maybe tells another story. So they both have 2 opportunities to tell a story and then they riff off each other.
Yeah. No, stories are really good. That's another copywriting thing. Like stories are sticky, and really easy to digest. And the format allows for them to be themselves. Like they talked about this in the behind the scenes is, what is it? The Ruben quote. What's his name?
Dave Rubenstein or
No, not Dave Rubenstein. Other Ruben.
Rick Rubin?
The Rick Rubin. It's like the best way to, I'm butchering this quote, the best way to like take care of your audience is to forget them entirely. Meaning if you're thinking about creating something for somebody,
Yeah.
you just get lost, versus they do something that they really enjoy, and that shows through in the product. That shows through in the art. And yes, they're being intentional and they're smart and they're savvy. I guess I was more surprised at their lack of, no, it has to be this way. There's kind of like, Sam was like, I don't like a fixed intro. I don't like that. I like this other thing. They're like, okay, cool. They didn't A/B test it. They didn't go like get a panel of audience members and say, what do they want? It's like, I like this. And the people that end up liking that will watch. And that I think is kind of like the downstream effect of, like, what were you saying right before we jumped on? You talked about people who are kind of insane, really talented. Like, what is it? Did they just like hammer this thing and then like now they're really good at it, or did they like what? Can you describe what you were trying to get?
So I was thinking in my head of like, okay, a lot of people have things that they're very excited about, psycho about. They're like, they love what they do, but it doesn't always translate to a good business or a good business idea. So like with that, so like I'll use myself an example. I love health and wellness. I love optimizing like athleticism. I love optimizing health because I think it is something that it makes me a better person. And I've been in a place where my health wasn't that good and I've seen the effects of it. So I, in Fly Bodies, have tried to figure out how can I monetize what I love doing, right? So like I'll keep doing what I'm doing. And as you're going, you start to figure out, oh, I can make this little tweak here. It's like the Dave Sinra example that you used where he loved reading and talking about books. And in the beginning, he had a paywall to listen to his like full episodes or something, right? But then one of his friends was like, dude, take that paywall down. You're going to make so much more money if you just get people that are wanting to do advertisements or anything. And that was like something where he didn't click because he was like, I need to make money. Like that's the first thing in entrepreneurship, I feel like, is a lot of times we have these things we love doing, but we're like, okay, well, I have to make money doing it because that's the game we play in. But essentially, like you figure that out as you go. And so I think Sean and Sam do a really good job of like giving ideas, saying like what could be done differently and bringing on people that have done that. And the other thing I wanted to touch on why I think is so popular is because they also get ahead of the curve when it comes to unknown people and bringing them on their podcast. So I'm going to give you like 6 people here that were probably unknown before they came on their podcast. Michael Saylor, Brian Johnson, Mohnish Pabiral, Barry Ritholtz, Jesse Itzler, and Dharmesh Shah. So those 6 people, like I had no idea who they were, but those are all killers in their industries.
Yeah. I would say that there's some of those people, depending on where you were looking, you knew of them. Now, maybe not known to the extent, like I knew who Mohnish Pabiral was before he came on their podcast.
Wow. Okay.
Because like having read, like kind of went through like the value investing, family tree, the coaching tree, if you will, right? So it's Ben Graham to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and like Mohnish, it just basically said like there's this book called the Dondo Investor. So it's basically this idea of like value-based investing, but also why would you do something new? If Warren Buffett is doing this thing, just learn exactly what is successful, but this guy just do that thing. Mentality. I think that the whether or not these guys were going to have the big upswing, right, or they had their moment, this was part of their platform. I don't know if there's an MFM bump, if you will, right, for certain people. Like I know what's her last name, she's actually an HBS grad. I'll look her up. It's Sarah
Egg Carton girl.
Egg Carton. Yeah, I forget her last name.
Yeah. She came on. I didn't know who she was, and then she
I didn't know who she was until she I didn't know her full story, but she actually came virtually and spoke to Harvard Business School folks in the
Cool.
Entrepreneurship Acquisition Club.
Very
and
cool.
she was the exact same person in that setting as she was on the podcast, which is really cool to see. That's an example of like a definite bump for this person, because she prefers to stay more private. Whereas some of these other folks, like, this is the thing also is it reminds me of the David Senra quote that he has from, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting like the marketer that he's pulling this from, but it's, you're advertising to a moving parade, a moving crowd. You're not advertising to like a static audience. And so you had never heard of these 6 people, and they had, and then now maybe availability bias, or they are having a bump, or they're, they are bigger in the world. It doesn't matter if people did know of them, you didn't know of them, and through that platform, now you get open up to this world, which is why I think that they are great, because their variety of people. They talked about that as well. Do we want to have just the most successful, like the biggest blockbuster people, or do we want to go more unknown? And they're like, let's just like get out of the middle. I don't want to ask questions to people who have been on the circuit, ask them the same questions. Like, that's boring. And so the way that they think about it is, for them, it's more interesting to have those conversations that people aren't having. And that I think is part of why they're successful, is because they're doing it in a way that isn't trying to like have the exact same conversation with Jesse Itzler. It's like, let's talk about something else.
Right. And it's that, like they say, the barbell strategy of, hey, we're going to get the top of the top or the bottom of the bottom that nobody knows about. And maybe we can spark like, oh, I've never heard of this guy, and that was awesome content. And to your point, that's a great way to, because if you're in the middle, you're going to get lost with everyone else, to your point. Like, so you have to do something that is a little outlandish, so that you're like, okay, the reason why I come to this podcast is because they're different than this pod. They're different than most podcasts, right?
Differentiated in some way.
Yeah. And so we have to find that on our end. And I have an idea at the end where, we can possibly do that, which we'll get into a little bit. But like, that's where we're in the discovery mode. Like, the other aspect of why they're so popular is because they're consistent, right? So in the beginning, they were only doing like once a week. And if you go back and listen to like way early podcasts, it was dog. They were terrible in the sense of like their microphones, their lighting, their video. It was all terrible. And then Sam hit a switch. And I don't know obviously I'd love to ask him this question of like, hey, when did you know that you were going to go all in podcasting? Because in one episode, I think it was the one I sent you, they said they started tracking metrics, and they started saying, oh, we're going to track metrics, and we want to be in, Sam even said, hey, we're going to focus on growth. So I'm going to ask him at some point, hey, when you started focusing on growth, what were you doing? Were you doing advertisements? Were you doing this? Because they were like, we were growing 30, 40% every month. And I think there's also that switch of like, in the beginning, it was kind of like a hobby for both of them. And it was like, hey, let's just be consistent. We'll do this once a week. We'll talk. We'll sit on these red couches and do this. And then all of a sudden and as you're doing it, you figure out, hey, this could be a big thing for both of us, right? Because I don't think Sam's dumb. I think he sees it as a revenue generating thing. And so he was like, you know what? Let's try to grow this thing. So I think for us, in the very beginning, 6 months to a year, we'll be ideating, we'll be just doing this consistently. And it's like, that's going to be the best thing for us. So,
that's right.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
And that's where I think a lot about finding good fit. So the book Range by David Epstein, I don't know if I brought this up previously.
I've never heard this. Go for it.
Yeah. So this is a good one. So this is kind of like debunking the expert hypothesis. So he starts out the book talking about chess champions and talks about Tiger Woods, and this is kind of thing in the zeitgeist that if you want to be really good at something, you need to start when you're 3. You need to start, pick this instrument, and you're going to just totally crush this thing. That is presupposing that you found a good fit. And his take in this book Range is actually you should enter a pretty broad discovery phase. And then once you hone in on the thing that is magic, you hone in on the thing that you really love doing, it's this double effect. So I'm going to bring in another book, Cal Newport.
Hit me with the double books.
So good they can't ignore you. And Cal Newport talks about like self-actualization theory of you want independence, relation, and competence. Not in that order necessarily, but like you got to choose what you work on, and you have control over your time, the autonomy. You're competent, meaning you're building the skills doing it. And then you also have like some social aspect because we're social animals. And the thing that I think makes people like Sean and Sam so successful is they found something that they really enjoyed doing, so they spent more time doing it. And they spend more time doing it, they get good, and they kind of, follow their nose, if you will, towards the things that drive more value for themselves and for others. And that's kind of like the business lesson is like, okay, you're doing something, the metrics are saying whatever this thing is, you shouldn't probably try to pre-specify this need. And a lot of people do market-based research that say, like, X number of people in this demographic are going to like this thing, so we'll create a podcast for that. And it's like, no, really, like, you get the best value out of the repetitions that you get because you're getting the feedback loop for yourself and from others, and then you build up the skills, and then it becomes this thing where it's like overnight now they're great and it's fantastic. They started from a position where they weren't so good.
For sure.
And the process to get there seemingly isn't this 10-year plan. It was, I like this. Let's keep doing this. Ooh, I like this better than that. When they both. So the other thing on top of what you just said is they both like what they're doing, and then finding each other, and then having the, I guess, background that they both know. Oh, this guy sold his business. This guy sold his business, and so we both can wrap on that. Also, we both still like to run businesses. Like we still both like. I think those connections also allow them to be a good fit because they're like, oh, I'm still trying to run Hampton. I'm still trying to run my e-commerce business. And also, we love talking to new people and about investing. Most people like money. Most people like investing. So they're both into that. Now, the cool thing is they are different. And I have this on my thing of like, Sam's almost like good cop, bad cop, where it's like, he will ask pointed questions. He'll be like, how much money do you make? Or how much money? And Sam's more like massage, like, hey, how's your business doing? Like that type of thing. And so I even watched a podcast earlier where a guy was like, I didn't like Sam because he was so like in my Sean
stuff.
Or Sam?
What's that?
Who's the one that's more forward?
Sam.
Okay.
Or unless you don't think so.
No. You just said the opposite at first.
Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, Sam is the one who literally, in the back of his brain, he's like, I care about my business. I want it to grow. I want to learn things from this person. And I want to get to the point now. I don't want to fluff this up. I want to get to the point now. So anyways, I thought that was interesting because if you go back, I remember a podcast I listened to when he was talking to, I'm going to bomb here, but I can't remember the exact person. It will hit me in a second.
Just describe it.
But he'll just say, so how much revenue are you bringing in right now? And like that's, I mean, if you don't know a person and like it's a very, very pointed question, it's like, that's something that most people don't ask. And it's for good or for bad. Like it's a podcast about business. So you don't want people like skirting around the things that you actually care about. So I think that's kind of cool, is like asking the tough questions, which he does a lot of times.
Yeah.
So anyways, so that's what I kind of like about their dynamic a little bit with their going back and forth.
Yeah, I think there is something about the dynamic of two people back and forth can be really good, but it can also be kind of flat. There can also be the aspect of what you think like an all-in, where it's just those four, and then there's this physics of conversation that there needs to be some difference in opinions, a difference in perspective, the willingness to you and I, a year and a half ago when we were doing this earlier, I think we had too much yes, and it kind of like it was this conversation that didn't really have a lot.
We just agreed with each other the whole time.
And we like each other. We like each other. That's fine. I think that it makes for a better podcast when you have people that there's some tension. There's like some drama.
Sure.
There's some no, I don't see it that way, or no, I think you're dumb. And having that mix of personalities makes it really engaging.
Yeah, and so going into this next bit that we're going to talk about is, I was curious if there's a specific podcast, My First Million podcast you liked, or a guest that you like, or anything. Because I have just a short snippet from a thing that I have. But if you want to think about yours, or let me go. It's up to you.
No, I mean, I like Sean does this thing where he'll sit down and just like talk. He'll just like do a teaching thing for like
you need to do that
20 minutes.
You need to do that.
Yeah, okay. I like teaching. I think it's a good way for me to explain.
Because why do you like teaching? Because you were a teacher at the Air Force Academy. I mean, that's
no, that's good. Luckily I got selected into it, and then had an affinity towards it, which I kind of had a sense that I would, and then I got pretty good at it. I wouldn't say I'm like very good, but people have commented to me that, hey, you explain things well. So there's a little bit of that affinity towards something that I like and enjoy. And so Sean's format where he's like, I'm going to rank business models. And he has the classic like F tier to S tier thing. And for me, entering business school, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this guy's perspective on is this thing. Or he's like, if I could start over today with, $1 million, what would I do? Those kinds of formats to me are like, it's so addicting because it's like, this guy's going to have the answers. Now, he does have some insights, and I'm getting a better appreciation for, what, oh gosh, now I forget from the most recent one that we watched. Who's the guy, the $8 billion investor debunking the gurus? I just watched it this morning.
That's what I just said. Barry Ritzholtz.
Yes, he's great. That guy is fire. He's awesome.
He was the man. I watched that twice already. I'm like, that dude's the man.
So good. So I'm forgetting, but there's this law that like 90% of things are horrible. They're crap. And so my discernment, I think, is the thing that's raising. But I love that format. So I don't know, what kind of episodes or things.
No, what's your just on top of what you just said earlier, like you are a great teacher. Like you synthesize the things that I say a lot of times into like 1 or 2 words. And I love that because I'm like, oh dude, that's so much easier to understand. And not to mention, I think eventually we will get into, hey Garrett, do a podcast by yourself on this subject and talk about blah, blah, blah. Anyways. They have so many good podcasts. Jesse Isler has a bunch when they're on there. I'm kind of rambling a bit, but Mr. Beast was on one of their podcasts where they were asking Mr. Beast questions and just regular questions. Instead of being free flowing, they would have a specific question to ask him. And in that question, he said, Mr. Beast said this, I'm going to read this whole thing. It says, when you ask most people to do something that is incredibly difficult, people's first inclination is that's not possible. And technically almost anything is possible. So my first thing is like, okay, why do you say that? Then he says, let's go through the gambit. Is it too expensive? Is it too unsafe? I hate when people tell me something that can't be done. Just tell me the cost and where their problems are. And then objectively, if it's too expensive, it's not worth my time. Then I'll kill it. If half the stuff I did, I just listened to people tell me that it wasn't possible, I wouldn't have done half the stuff I would have done. So that to me is super helpful because a lot of times as a business person, you'll get a lot of pushback. And I know I use Mr. Beast instead of, Sean or Sam because they have a ton of stuff, but that was so helpful for me because Mr. Beast has gone from like a lowly YouTuber to now a huge $1 billion company. And so a lot of times people will tell me, I don't think that's possible, or that's not a good idea or something like that. And I'll just be like, well, can it be done? Like, is it possible? Can it be done? And I'm not trying to send people to Mars or build my own chocolate brand, but it's super helpful to kind of look at things objectively like that. Like, hey, is this worth my time? Can we do this? Because if we can figure it out. And it's about problem solving. And so that's what it comes down to is like, he essentially wanted problem solvers around him and give them basically a way to figure stuff out. So that was my favorite quote thing.
No, that's a really good one because I think it's widely applicable. It reminds me of how Elon thinks about first principles thinking of, a little bit of like, well, what could you do, in this? So you think about like launch, like reusability, like why is that not possible or things, and kind of not listening to the experience drive your actions, and then let's actually just test it. Let's see, let's push it. Let's find the actual limit or requirement. Mm-hmm. It's something that I'm dealing with right now. Like I started a new job. It's not the project is not public, but like just say in the space realm, trying to do a feasibility study and hearing really smart PhDs talk about whether or not something is technically possible. One, I'm learning a lot about space. Right? I'm catching up on my astro knowledge and all the stuff that I learned in the Air Force about satellites and launch. And it's like, oh, well, these people are making really well-informed recommendations and calculations. However, this thing hasn't been attempted yet. So there's actually a lot of room for this trial and error, or let's lay out what these things are and then let's knock them down one by one and see, is there some critical path of requirements that we can't meet and therefore maybe it's not feasible, or let's just attack the thing that is the most critical requirement and beat that down. So the whole launch cost thing that Elon, he didn't identify it, but he was like, oh, well, if the problem is launch cost, then what's the biggest driver? Well, it's the launch vehicle and the time to produce that. So let's just make that reusable.
Exactly.
It's like, and I know that sounds silly.
No, but it's
everyone,
so true.
Everyone thought it's the 4 stages of technology is it's impossible, it's impractical, people won't want it, and then it's like now it's commonplace.
Now it's commonplace. Yeah, no, exactly. And like to your point, there's so many. We just take everything mostly for face value, and I did that when I first got to LA Air Force Base. I was like, oh man, this is a big organization. They must have everything figured out. No one has anything figured out. That's a bold statement, but it's not true. But that's the whole point. Is like you should go into it with a curiosity, obviously, because that's what I do these days. I try to. I don't always do it, but I'm like, most people don't have everything figured out, and they're just trying to basically make a good product and do the best they can. But there's always ways to do things better. And so that's where it's like entrepreneurship it's fun to think about these ideas that Sam and Sean come up with, because you're like, oh man, that could be done better. Oh, I love that. And it's exciting. So the last thing I wanted, part of our episode here, is I want to talk about things that we've learned that have changed our life. And I have a couple on my side. I have one big one. I have like 2 small ones, one big one. Cause I'm like, why not give them, more than they bargained for here? They've made it this far. Come on.
That's right.
If you've made it this far, you're going to get, the goods. You I think you're reading a book right now. Is that what you're going to talk about?
I just finished The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. And
you said The Psychology of Money?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that book, like I might have started it, or I've had it for a while, or I've heard of it, and I had some sense of what was going to be in that book. But actually, I had no idea what was going to be in that book. One, it's super digestible, easy read. It's 19 different lessons on how behavior impacts money-making decisions. And I found it to be really enjoyable and insightful as like a mirror to how I make decisions and how I think about things. 2 things personally. One thing is the wealth or kind of like the freedom of living below your means is critical, and that creep up and the social comparison thing that drives people into being, you make $1 million a year and you're spending most of that is a form of poverty to some extent. I'm not going to say that those people live, the same life as somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck, but they are putting themselves in that camp. So post MBA, I'm thinking about ways to peg my lifestyle. So one, Molly and I are well aligned on that. That's a good point to have a good partner in this, right? Similar
100%.
Frame making.
Huge.
And then the other thing is like, you can be proactive and then actually the true freedom that comes from not letting, for example, the market dips and now you're not as liquid and you have to sell off some stock. Oop, you just interrupted compounding unnecessarily. That's like the Charlie Munger-ism of don't do that. So I'm thinking about ways to make sure that I'm living below my means, and then also being just fulfilled in that. There's I took an Arthur Brooks class this past spring at HBS about leadership and happiness, and he talks a lot about the ratio of needs to wants, and it's like just make your wants like smaller. Or is it halves to wants? Or so basically it's like
needs to wants. No, I think that's it. Yeah,
it's like if you inflate what you think that you're desiring, you're actually just getting on the hedonic treadmill forever, and it's just not. It's a recipe for being miserable. So that's one thing. The other side of it is more because professionally is you talk about people don't have it figured out. Similar to entrepreneurship, finance is one of those fields where really smart people make a bunch of dumb decisions and they're inconsistent across time because human psychology plays into all of these decisions. And so I'm thinking about ways to set up ways to be kind of like mentally flexible, curious about things, kind of like checking my assumptions, the feedback loop for myself in decision making, so that I am avoiding destruction. That's kind of like, we talk about that survivorship is like
just staying in the game.
Staying in the game and avoiding destruction and having this kind of like robust personal life, personal portfolio, not just from a finance perspective. So that's kind of what's changing my life and how I'm acting this next phase.
That's cool, man. I think the first one, to dumb it down, spend less than you make, right? I think that is I think it's a huge issue in the country right now. And might be a hot take, but like a lot of people want to live a certain type of lifestyle in a certain place in the country. And they're like, I can't. And that's not my fault. And it's their fault. And they need to fix it so that I can live this lifestyle. And it's like, I don't like that thought process because you're putting the ownership on them, and whereas extreme ownership, right? It's like, no, if you really want something, then you need to figure out how to do that thing. But if you only need something, you need a house, you need food, you need, kinship, community, right? There's a difference between wants and needs. And so to your point, I think that's a very hairy topic in today's society. It's like, hey, sometimes you got to eat rice and beans. You can't go get the filet mignon. And so to your point, your significant other / the people you're around kind of have to be on board with that because you're going to get different signals. Talk about that internal scorecard versus the external scorecard. So
there's a chapter at the end of the book, Psychology of Money, which is just about the history of the American consumer, like how we got into the position that we're at, about the current thought process of personal debt is just fine and I should have about the same life as somebody else that is making more money than me. And lots of stuff. He talks a lot about how that mentality carried over for a long time because ideas are very sticky versus reality, what reality is versus what the idea is. And the current idea of this isn't working out for me or this isn't working for us, even if economically things change, that idea will probably stick around for a lot longer. And so It's actually a really interesting kind of like snapshot. He released the book in 2020, and so it didn't include a bunch of the COVID madness and post-COVID madness. It's very interesting to see how this will play out. So if anything, read the book for yourself, but also just that like little history piece. He's got a blog. I'm sure you go look it up. You could find this thing about kind of the rise or the origins of the American consumer. It talks directly about the social comparison and how we got to where we are and how people live with a lot of debt and all the things that relate to how debt kind of hampers your ability to live the life that you really do want.
Or you just keep going more and more into debt and you think that somebody else is going to take care of it one day. Anyways, which is not ideal in my opinion. But
that's right.
To each their own.
Let's hear what's changed your life or your perspective.
First one, short one, but the do not disturb feature that you told me about. Small but mighty, because now I don't have to worry about any dings, ticks, or buzzes in these conversations. And I'm not super savvy when it comes to technology, but like something like that, it's like I know how to do a lot of stuff, but it's like, oh, just put it on do not disturb. Cool, done. That's one. That's an amazing life lesson or life changer. Then deadlines matter. I think I'll tell a story real quick about Flybody's first challenge that we did for a school. Our product was very, very bare minimum, but we got a contract with a school in, we'll say February. We got the contract in October. Okay. The challenge was going to be in February. And so we had to have some type of product ready to provide for that school. And it wasn't nearly what the product is today, but we built a product that worked and was able. The reason why I say deadlines matters because even with this podcast, we will continue to kick the can down the road if we do not set a date, a time, and say, hey, I'm going to do it this date and time, or it needs to be done by this date and time. So I think that is just a profound thing. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a perfect date and time, but having a date and time gives you a progress report. And so setting a date and time to do something is super helpful. And that's a big unlock for me from a business standpoint and from a life standpoint. Do you want to make a comment on that? Anything?
No notes.
No notes. And
it's
then,
good.
And then the last thing is Bets of Life. They're Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke.
Yep, it's a great book.
I love that book. And life, there are bets. You're making a bet. This podcast is a bet. people talk about what's the difference between a bet and an investment. Everything's a bet, essentially, like that you're doing, because you're making a bet that it's going to work out probably better for you. You want it to work out better for you.
Yeah, so, more probably than not, or probability weighted decision making.
Correct. And there we go. Exactly. So bets. And I think, and I we'll talk about this more, but Alchemist, it sounds good and I like it. Don't get me wrong. And I know we've made some moves on Alchemist, but I'm thinking maybe Big Bets could be the podcast, potentially. Big Bets. And I love the term double Bs.
The bodies and billions thing, bodies in business, something about it.
The bees. But Alchemist is good. I'm putting this out here, brainstorming, throwing it out there. You'll chew on it. I'll chew on it. But I was thinking, double Ds, but double Bs. But Big Bets, because, and the reason before we have to cut this is like, you can talk to anybody about bets, right? What's the biggest bet you ever made in your life? Garrett, you don't have to answer that now. But like when I think about that, I go, oh, what is the biggest bet I've made in my life that's panned out or that's gone wrong? And everybody's made bets in their life. And poker and gambling is huge in today's society with like Kalshi, Polymarket, all these things. And now everybody's betting on everything. And it's either for better or for worse, but bets are huge.
Yeah, I would say that the format of a financial outcome, there's like a market maker, like somebody has a book that they're going to like pay you out for something, is just bringing it to the foreground. I mean, that is a way to make it more visible, but you're right that everyone is consistently making these more likely than not type of decisions, or they're, I'm going to go picking an academic major in college. Mm-hmm. You're picking one that, looking at the future, I think that this is going to have a better outcome than if I chose a different one. And then, similar to, you brought earlier, like the nobody's got it figured out entrepreneurship thing is, okay, well, best informed decision using analogy or example or advice. I'm going to follow my intuition. The form of, I'm not a big Polymarket or Kalshi guy. Prediction market thing.
I'm not either. I'm a Robinhood guy.
I don't find it fun. But I take, I invest. I
invest. No big deal.
I bet. Well, so sure. But what I'm talking about is like index funds. I know.
I'm just saying, like, I'm joking.
Gotcha.
Just like,
I'm an investor, right? I'll put that in my bio. I'm an investor.
I make bets.
It's just like everyone's doing it all the time. But they just don't know. They don't know. I'm putting time into my physical health because I see it as that's a great bet. Weight adjusted thing. That's a great bet. Like I've seen it pan out for a lot of people. I don't know if I'm going to have a significant health event. I know that I hope I don't, but also I know that if I'm taking care of myself, I'm increasing the odds of my survival, right? Like, my if I have more muscle mass, then, I won't waste away in my old age, or bone density, these things that I don't think about every day. I think the best way to think about it is, what are some of the simple activities that you're going to get this high return on that you don't have to like over engineer and think about too much. I think a lot about, there's this meme of like a bell curve. There's like the big brain and small brain things. And then in the middle, there's like people who overcomplicate it. It's really just Occam's razor, which is like the small brain thing would be, hey, just work out a couple days a week. And people in the middle are like, well, no, you need 4 days of strength training and 2 days of up to 60 minutes of It's like, and then the big brain thing is, hey, just work out a few days a week. And it's like, in the end, the consistency of just doing something. The
small brains are all on the same page.
They're on the same page. And it's like, oh, actually, Occam's razor does pan out. That's kind of how I think about bets, is like, I can't overcomplicate it.
I gotta bounce because I got a meeting in 3 minutes. This was awesome. This was great. That's the pod.